Well, here we are again, 5 o'clock Monday afternoon / evening, depending on your time zone. Scott's Weather going live. We'll have a look at what's going on around the world and a few interesting video stories coming up in 30. Sit through the countdown and I'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to this Monday afternoon. I guess, yeah, it is Monday. Tuesday, if you're farther east in the other time zone on the yonder side of the time international date line. That's what they call it. It's crazy what happens with these minds as we get just a little bit older. We begin to be thinking about things or aren't able to recall exactly how we thought we would. Not that now I can understand why those politicians setting up there. I don't remember. And they get memoir money for this too, for their memories. Interesting. All right, let's start on Twitter. In fact, let's not start on Twitter. Let's do exactly how I wanted to do. I just needed to have that up there to begin to identify the proper screen to share. Off in Australia, dry. Much of the continent out expected over the next 7 days on the dry side. But that doesn't mean it's the only place. Down on this, looks like it's going to be wet and windy in parts of the eastern portion of New South Wales as low pressure deepens across the Tasman Sea. And the radar just clicking. Let's just zoom on in there because I know we can. We don't necessarily want to open another tab. We just want to zoom so we can get in there and see that storm as it winds up before it kind of weakens or heads off to the east into New Zealand. Cold front bringing wind, rain, and thunderstorms to southwest Australia tonight. This system could cause damaging winds and, of course, dangerous surf. It's winter, so you're brave if you're on out there. And then additional winds as another storm heads onshore or heads towards the southwest coast, a good distance south of Perth. And the bioluminescent display lit up the shores of Jervis Bay in southern New South Wales over the weekend. So kind of active down there. And this was a picture or the shot of, hey, Karen, my favorite audience member. Appreciate you stopping in. Climate emergency hashtag was the one given to the snow happening in the Australian Alps as they were dealing with that storm as it now pulls off to the east. From the European Space Agency, the ESA, the first images are exceeding our expectations. That's what you always want to hear when a satellite, a telescope, some kind of instrument opens the shutter doors and it looks out for the first time in its anticipated environment. Exceeding our expectations, says Daniel Mueller, ESA Solar Orbiter Project scientist. Join us for a press conference on 16 July, so that's 3 days out. To look at the sun up close. Right now we've got several satellites out there from Solar Ward to SOHO to, I know there's a couple of others, but the sun is of keen interest. And you wouldn't know it. These climate folks are watching the temperatures as compared to, say, the Gulf of Maine, which is where this particular tweet came from. Interested about the warming. And it's interesting how they can completely ignore the cycles of the sun. That the only place, well, almost the only place where heat comes from on this planet. But nonetheless, the Gulf of Maine doing some warming as compared to the entire global profile of the oceans. And what that ultimately means is if there's more heat in the oceans, that means there's more vapor coming off the oceans. That will result in more humidity, therefore more cloud cover, therefore more rainfall. And we have seen some incredible rains over this last 3-4 months, all the way from Africa that we've talked about a couple of times, where they are at 2 to 2.25 times their entire summer rainfall has already fallen. And then China, wicked floods. No videos of those today, but we'll see what's going on. And then also Japan dealing with some incredible floods. All right, pictures of comet Neowise over the Connecticut River Valley near Cornwall, Connecticut during the pre-dawn hours of yesterday morning. Venus visible for the far right in one photo. Mars was above and visible next to the moon, while Saturn and Jupiter were way behind him. I'm just going to click on just this one. So you can see Neowise. This is probably the most representative of what the pictures look like, because once you start zooming in things tend to look larger than they would to the naked eye. And then this being the constellation Taurus right in there. And so we have that bright eye of Venus right in the middle of Taurus, and then the seven sisters of the Pleiades here. So these would be your markers. Now, I have mountains to the east. This view would be completely obscured. I wouldn't be able to see this. Maybe the Pleiades would have peaked above the mountains, but this would not be visible. So if you were from where I am, Crestone, then you need to head out east, or excuse me, west into the valley. So these mountains are a little bit shrunk off to the east. All right, yeah, still some snow trying to melt. Despite the warmer temperatures globally, remember, warmer, more water, more precipitation. That means that we can get more snow piled up in the winter. But more than 10 meters or 32 feet of snow have accumulated in parts of southern Norway by July, according to the BKK Energy Company, who's conducting clearing operations to prevent flooding in the mountains. Because so much of the power over there is hydro that this snow is potential energy. So I'm going to go to the wide view to deal with kind of what's happening in Australia, and Australia is right in here, New Zealand in here, and then this is the low that caused those snows and those very powerful winds. It's now pulling off to shore. Also South Africa dealing with some incredible winds, as we heard tonight, as those 50, 60 plus mile an hour winds raging on, and that event's going to be gone in 24 hours or so. But the jet stream remains very, very active onto the south and Southern America through Chile and Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, all dealing with winter weather over the next week or so. A little bit closer to home, it's just plain hot. Just plain hot. 113, 116, 114 at the lower Colorado River Valley, 111 in Phoenix, 102 in Tucson, as they've been able to get some afternoon showers. They got some last night to take the heat off of it, and then just wicked heat in Texas. More seasonable, but still hot through the southern Gulf coastal states. But one more shot. I wanted to take a look at this right in here, where just outside of Pecos was running 116. This was 2 hours ago. So just some near record heat in progress in those locations. And that heat, if it isn't being provided, if it hasn't been hot enough to trigger some thunder showers by now, probably isn't going to happen. You're going to stay warm. Where we've got some elevation and a little bit of monsoon moisture trickling north, we've been able to get some cooling showers through the Four Corners area all the way up into Wyoming. And then last night, a nice complex of storms erupted across Kansas, rolling through eastern Oklahoma, and now working into Arkansas. And that has really aided in keeping this heat wave at bay in those locations. And then to the east, dealing with the remnants of Faye as it rolled north as the weekend began. 1, 2, 3, 4 inches worth of rain. Atlantic City registering one of the higher totals that I saw, which was 5+ inches, and definitely going to help the dry situation that has been in place for a couple of weeks now across from Delmarva Peninsula and then northbound. Just about everybody north of there was ready for some beneficial rains. Where are they presently? Yes, the Red River Valley of the north of Fargo, headed to, say, International Falls, North Dakota, or Minnesota, and then the rain's leaving the Carolinas. But otherwise, these big thunderstorm complexes, the majority of the ones, the one that at least have warnings, are on the Colorado high prairies now as they race into Kansas, Nebraska, and then down into Oklahoma and Kansas. But these showers have certainly kept the mountains a little bit cooler than they would be otherwise without them. Good to see you. Yeah, just plain hot, Robin. Yeah, that is it. I look over and yeah, dead, just plain hot. That's all we need to say. Karen with, whoa, I can't imagine that much snow. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get some snow. We have warm oceans. With warm oceans, we can figure that out, because that always leads to humidity in the atmosphere, and it's got to come out one way or another. Water droplet up, water droplet down. That's just how it works. So from today, we were looking at the risk of the severe weather up there and all the way down through the front of the Rockies with a cool front, and it's stationary. It's just kind of puny. You don't expect to see too strong a cool front into the deep south this time of year. And the fact that it's down here this far south rather than, say, along the Ohio River Valley says something. It just says something that we've had some cool weather move on through. But we move day 2, day 3, the intensity kind of winds down. The storm chasers just kind of throw it in for the season, and we'll just call it the summer doldrums with the record heat. Now, Monday, today, this is where the models were anticipating forecast high temperatures at or above, or let's just say within 1 degree of the previous record. So most of that focused down in Texas and then into the Florida Keys and then in around Louisiana, MSY, New Orleans at 97 degrees with 98 at that station being the record high happening in 1991. So crazy heat. And as we can see up here in this top banner, then 10 records tomorrow, 4 the day after, then 111. So not nearly as crazy. As the heat kind of takes a little bit of a break. But I'm going to rewind this jet stream, and what we're interested in here, this is the atmosphere up at about 18,000 feet, halfway through the density of the atmosphere, and that's why the 500 millibar level is most interesting, as you're about halfway up. Now, that first half of it consumes maybe 3.5 miles, and then the other half all the way to space. All the way to space. So most of the density of the atmosphere down at the bottom, so we just slice it in half, and that's kind of just a good way to begin to look at the flow and the winds and the steering currents and so forth. It's not the whole story, but it's a big chunk of it. So what we've got in Canada is this deep low, keeping them wet, keeping them unsettled, keeping their crops nice and green. It can't go on too long. We've got to get a little bit of a dry spell as we get to August and September, because if this water were to continue into that season, it makes their incredible growing season all for naught. Because if you can't go in because of mud, or you can't get the crops to dry because of the rain, then it becomes a mold out, or just a failure of being able to get in there. So we've got to just time these things just right. So that low, again, reinforcing the rain, that it just kind of sits there and spins and then slowly gets nudged to the east. And of course, we've got this another one on the northern Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of Alaska. It just kind of rolls on through. It says, I'll take your place. I'll take your place. And so we end up with another storm rolling across Canada. And then another one drops in off this Pacific ridge. But the whole while, this high remains intact. From Florida to the Delmarva Peninsula, across Texas, Arkansas, all the way out into the Four Corners region, it just remains intact. Now, all of these little ripples, these little greens and these little reds are little vortices, little areas where the atmosphere spins up. If you've got moisture, if you've got some cool air at about 12,000 feet, that's enough in this heat to trigger showers and thunderstorms. And this is the randomness of summer thunderstorms. They're not entirely random, but they don't always pop up in places that you would certainly expect them to be. So that happens. And even as we push this baby out all the way, almost 14, 15 days, the high's in place. It's not as strong, but it's still going to leave temperatures in the middle and western part of the U.S. at or above maybe 5 to 10 degrees above normal. So that puts it, in a territory where summer's not given up very easily. So this is the total accumulated precipitation. We're going to look at areas who have red, like say the northern peninsula of Michigan, 4 inches, 3 inches, down east of Des Moines into northern Missouri, 2-3 inches, and this is just over this week. And the west, nada, maybe a few showers south of Reno, but again, not leading to a whole lot of moisture. Canada remains largely wet. And Texas has had some nice clusters of thunderstorms, but they're on the verge of and are developing a deeper drought, so they could use some rain. But this model at this particular time says, don't wait on us. And where could we see flooding or dangerous flooding? On the western side of the Appalachia, or just straight up through Appalachia, through West Virginia, down into the hill country of far western I guess they would probably call it mountain country. It's hill country if you're from the Rockies, but back there, they're mountains. So of eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, and into, say Lookout Mountain and so forth off to the south. So that's kind of what's going on in that direction. But NEO-wise is kind of what I'm interested in. I'm kind of a fan of the comets, but I'm not quite ready to get up at 4 o'clock and drive out into the valley to be clear of the mountains. So how dedicated am I? A little bit. Somebody else can take the pictures, though, at this point in my life. All right, everybody, thanks for swinging on by here, for dropping in. Who do we have? Got a couple of folks in there, Success Systems and Metadon. Good to see you on there, and then a YouTube visitor or two. So good to see you all. Yeah, Karen, I can't imagine that much snow. I think we've got a crazy winter coming up. I really, really do. Summer's great. We've got to enjoy it. We've got to get out and play and get our gardens going and get our green on, because these winters are getting more and more interesting by the year as this grand solar minimum begins to take some shape. All right, Risa, oh, bless your heart. How hot were you out there today? I have to go take a look. I have to look. You got a front nearby, but I'm still seeing 102, 104. So bless your heart. Stay inside or, spritz yourself and stay cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll catch you all tomorrow. And if you want to catch the replay of my other show, Another Perspective, where we talked about currencies, that is my other love. I love my weather. I really, really do. But my other passion is economics. It really is. And so we talked about currencies and where to maybe anticipate that because we're dealing with the developing of a recession, maybe a depression, who knows, but certainly some COVID situation ongoing, that the economy is going to have to do some reconfiguring. That's kind of a given. So we talked about currencies over there, and it was just part one of what will be a multi-part discussion on where we go as a people with currency, money, and where to store our hard-earned value. All right, everybody, take care. I'll see you soon, and keep looking up. Did this end? No.